Did you know it's not that hard to take your riding footage from looking like this to looking like this? This is a guide for the beginner that wants to get fantastic footage quickly without needing a background in Hollywood film production. So we're keeping it simple, looking at how to use the basic options built into some of the best action cameras today so that you can get amazing results with minimal effort. And for this, we're going to focus on two cameras from Insta360 who are sponsoring this video. They are the Ace Pro 2 for those POV shots, along with the X5, which we'll use to get some fantastic external shots. We'll also be putting them up against the GoPro Hero 13 to see how it compares in different situations. And even though we're looking at these cameras specifically, a lot of what we're covering will be universal. So with that in mind, what is it that makes great riding footage? Well, the biggest things we want to consider are field of view, where generally speaking, we want a wide FOV to not only see more of what's going on in front of you, but also to create that sense of speed. Frame rate and shutter speed. Getting a good combination here will help us create the right amount of motion blur, again, helping with that sense of speed. Image stability. We want to be able to see what's going on without completely losing that feeling of involvement in the activity as a viewer. And finally, audio, where many would argue that audio is even more important than the visual elements, because poor audio will turn off the viewer a lot quicker than poor visuals will. And we'll go into each of these elements as we're discussing the different shots that we want. With that, let's dive into our first category of footage, the tried and tested point of view angle. POV shots are nothing new to us motorcyclists. We've been watching POV content for 10 to 15 years at this point, but how do we get the best footage with what we have available today? We'll start with the settings from different times of day, then look at mounting positions. First is daytime shooting. A very solid starting point for resolution and frame rate is 4K at 30 frames per second. You don't need 8K, but the benefit of having an 8K sensor is that it uses the hidden data for stabilization and horizon lock while maintaining a true 4K image. Now, with the camera set at 30 FPS, we need to pair it with the proper shutter speed to get that nice natural looking motion blur that adds to that sense of speed. For that, we want to use the 180-degree rule, which basically says to pick a shutter speed that is double your frame rate. So in this case, 1/60. And by selecting that, you'll lock it in to create a consistent looking shot for your ride. However, if you anticipate needing to slow down the footage at any point, you can go to 60 FPS and a 1/120 shutter speed. But you likely won't need that for your general POV shots. Now, with these shutter speeds, it's going to overexpose the image as standard. So we need these little things called ND filters, which are basically sunglasses for the camera lens and reduce how much light is getting into it. These you can actually buy directly from Insta360 and you get an ND8, 16 and 32 as part of the set. To keep things simple, at 4K 30 FPS and 1/60, using ND16 will likely be fine for a typical day. However, if it's clear skies, high sun, and you aren't riding any darker areas, stepping up to ND32 may be best. And then just to quickly run through some of the other settings, turn HDI on for a better range of colors. Stabilization I have set to low because it reduces the annoying level of movement while maintaining that active feel. And now if we swipe from the right, we get some extra settings where we want to select manual mode, and then first up we have our color profiles. Honestly, you can keep this as standard as I think it looks great as it is. And then you can very easily tweak the colors in editing, which is something we'll cover later. But really you can just test these different profiles and see what you think. Some are specifically designed to be color graded later, like the flat profile or the eye-log feature. But for this guide, you can just keep those off. Color grading is a whole video in itself and a little out of the scope of what we want to achieve here, but just know that you can get fantastic results with the standard profiles on the camera. For daytime and our selected shutter speed, ISO is set to 400 max, as you shouldn't need any more than that. And if you set it any higher, there's a chance it will crank too high in shaded areas, creating some graining. White balance we can leave at an auto, EV leave at 0, with sharpness on medium or low. And one last thing to do is go into the camera settings and then image settings and change the bit rate to high so that we're getting maximum quality from the camera. Okay, let's talk about field of view next. Again, to keep it simple, we're just going to go with the widest available, which is the action setting here. If you go too narrow, you really start to lose that sense of speed while also restricting how much you can actually see around the bike. Going wide does the opposite. Comparing this to the GoPro Hero 13 at 156 degrees compared to Ace Pro 2's 157, you can see that the GoPro has a slightly taller frame, while the Ace Pro 2 has a wider frame. Not a huge difference, and really it just comes down to what part of the frame you value more. And with all the settings in place, now you're ready to head out there and get some great POV footage. For mounting, I would suggest either a chin mount, which creates a more dynamic point of view when moving around on the bike, while also giving you the option to look at specific details in the shot. But having said that, I do really like the chest mount too. It's a bit more restrictive in what it's capturing, but being slightly lower down and behind the arms, it feels like you're in the riding experience a little bit more. And now moving on to night and low light footage, the first thing we want to do is switch the recording mode to pure video. This is a setting specifically designed for low light conditions where it uses AI to manage image brightness and reduce noise. We're going to keep the resolution and frame rate to 4K 30 FPS as this automatically enables Pure Video Plus, which basically means you get the best image quality possible for low light conditions out of this camera. Color profile will keep on standard. EV we're going to reduce to around minus 0.7, as I think 0 is just a touch too bright to feel like nighttime. White balance we're going to keep on auto, metering mode on matrix, exposure preset on anti-flicker, and sharpness on medium or low. And with that, you're good to go. Now, even though the Ace Pro 2 is great in low light conditions, having some light is going to make your shot a lot more interesting. This could be heading out after sunset to get some epic skyline shots, or heading into a more built up area where the lights on the street and the buildings really shine. And you can just use the mounting options we looked at earlier. A quick comparison with the GoPro Hero 13 here shows that the Ace Pro 2 is a clear winner when it comes to low light. And while it doesn't fare too badly when there's a lot of light around, as you start to lose some of those light sources, it starts to suffer. Now, admittedly, I don't do much night riding, but if you do, or you're thinking about other use cases for your camera, maybe other activities you do or holidays where you might shoot at night, this might be something to consider. Okay, so let's move on to getting some external shots, which we're going to get using the Insta360 X5. For your daytime shooting, I'd recommend sticking with 8K 30 FPS, because something to bear in mind is this is 8K when combining both lenses. So when you come to reframe your shots later, those shots will be in 4K, which is maximum quality. This does mean sacrificing things like HDR and higher frame rate shooting, but for what you want this camera for, the extra quality and detail of 8K 30 is the best option. I'd also recommend keeping the adjustment settings in automatic, because with 360 video, you don't always know what you're going to be using in your footage because it captures everything around you. So keeping it in automatic would give you the best chance of capturing everything in the best quality. Plus, because you can't get ND filters for 360 cameras at this point, you won't be able to adopt the 180-degree rule and set the shutter speed to 1/60 because the image will be far overexposed. The only thing I would consider playing around with is the exposure compensation, as standard whites can be a little blown out like clouds in the sky, so dropping down to minus 0.3 can help with that, but really it's just personal preference. Now, if you do want to get some slow motion footage, you'll have to drop down to 5.7K and 60 FPS, where the quality will dip slightly, but depending on what you're shooting, it can still look great. And just like the Ace Pro 2, make sure to head to the image settings to select the highest bitrate. As for low light shooting, the X5 has had a massive upgrade compared to the X4 as Insta360 have brought their pure video mode to their flagship 360 camera, and it can be used right up to the 8K 30 FPS mode. This means apart from tweaking exposure compensation like we did with the Ace Pro 2, you're good to saddle up and get those great external night shots. Now you just need to decide where to mount it, and really this is anywhere where you can fix the mount and a selfie stick to your bike. A few of my favorites are using a mount on the front of the bike looking back at me, or if you're after that rolling camera look, you can have it extended out in front of the bike a little bit more. Just be mindful that the longer you extend the selfie stick out, the more movement you're going to get. Positioning it low and out to the side is always a good shot because it allows you to get angles of the front wheel, your feet, and the back of the bike too, all in one shot, which you can reframe in different ways later. And because it's low down, you really feel that speed. And then finally, extending the selfie stick out behind the bike to create that chase cam look. This is a great angle for those spirited rides through the twisties, or even slower rides through interesting scenery, remembering that you're capturing everything, so you don't need to be looking at the bike at all times. And if you want some static shots, the possibilities are almost endless. Just get creative and test different ways of moving the camera around the bike and you can get some really great looking shots. And the last thing I'll say on the X5 is that this can easily double up as your POV camera too. You can mount it in similar spots and use it in the 360 mode for a huge field of view, or you can switch to a single lens mode where it'll operate very much like an Ace Pro 2. You're going to be a bit more limited with just using this camera, particularly as it won't have ND filters, and obviously you can't get multiple shots from one ride either, but the X5 is a phenomenal multi-purpose starting point. Okay, let's talk audio. Both the X5 and the Ace Pro 2 have built-in wind protection now, as well as specific settings designed to deaden wind noise while maintaining other audio details. These are pretty good, and in certain situations, surprisingly good, even at high speed. Now, when they are a little bit more exposed, the wind noise does start to creep up. But I think for a lot of people, this is still good enough just to get a sense of the ride and to hear the engine. Here's a test of both, along with the GoPro Hero 13. Okay, finally, let's talk about editing. Sticking with our simplicity theme, I'm not going to go too deep on this, but rather show you some very quick things you can do inside the Insta360 Studio app to spruce up your footage. Firstly is simple color grading. And by simple, I mean the click of a button. The Color Plus option does automatic color grading, which I think is more than fine for 99% of people. Just turning this on makes it look a little less flat compared to the original footage, and you can play around with the slider to adjust the strength. Around 30 for me is enough to give the image a bit more quality and pop. Now, if you do want to go a bit further, you can dive into the Adjust section to start messing around with things there. But honestly, if you don't know anything about color grading, I just wouldn't touch this. And when it comes to editing and reframing your 360 footage, these are the key things to know. You can use these settings at the top to quickly change the perspective of the footage depending on the look that you want. You can left click and drag the screen around to get the framing you want, and then right click on the footage to create a keyframe, which by moving it to the beginning of the clip will lock it in that position. Or if you want a panning shot, you can create a second keyframe in a different position and it will automatically move from one position to the next. And one of my favorite options is Deep Track, which lets you select a specific object in the frame and it will track it automatically to create the perfect pan on an object with zero effort. And obviously there's a lot of other little settings to test out, but that's the bulk of what you're going to be doing. And I just encourage you to have a play around and see what everything does. And it goes without saying that there's plenty of guides out there that you can watch to find out how to use them. But once you understand those basics, you can use this to piece together your clips as you want, then simply export it to your video editor of choice if that footage is going to a bigger project, or if you just want to throw up some footage somewhere to show your mates, you won't need any more than this studio. And when you do export, make sure you're exporting at the native resolution and bitrate so that you're exporting the full quality. And that about covers it. Hopefully you can see that you don't need to be a fully fledged filmmaker to get some fantastic shots of your bike and your riding. And if you're looking for a camera or upgrading one that you have, now's the perfect time because Insta360's Prime Day deals are live with some heavy discounts. And if you order through my affiliate link down in the description, the first 50 will get a free motorcycle kit thrown in too. So head to the link down below to see what deals are available and to grab yours today. But outside of that, thank you so much for joining me for this one, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.